In this video, we're going to look at how to name parts in a circle. So here we have a circle, and we're going to just start naming some parts of it. So some of the parts of a circle that you should know how to identify would be, for instance, the radius. And the radius is basically a segment that has the endpoints at the center and on the circle itself. So a radius in this circle that has an endpoint on the center and on the circle itself would be segment AB. So if I look at segment AB, that is a radius because it goes from the center to the circle. There's another radius I can name, which would be the segment that has the endpoints at A and C. So that would be segment AC. And another radius I have in this would be the segment with endpoints A and D. So I could say that's segment AD. Another way you could write the radius of a circle is basically, I just said segment AB. I could have said segment AC and segment AD. So these are the ways we could name the segments. And you use this format when you're writing a sentence out and you want to describe that part of a circle. So this is, again, these are all radius, or we could, plural would be radii. So plural, make a note of that, will be the word radii. So these are all radii of the circle with this center A. And again, these are the way you name the actual segments. Let's say that I had some lengths here. So if I had let's say the distance from A to B was 2. Well, since this is a circle, and one of the things for circles is that all the radii are going to be congruent, meaning they're all going to have the same length. So since AC is a radius, I know that's length 2. And since AD is a radius, this is length 2. Again, I just made up a number for AB to let it be 2. I could have picked any number, but since I picked 2, I know all the radii have to be length 2. And if I want to describe the length, so if I want to talk about the length of a radius, so the length of the radius is different from the actual radius itself. So naming a radius is the actual part, and then the length of the radius, we use a different notation. So the length of the radius, or in this case the radii, would be AB. So we don't put the bar when we're talking about the distance or the length of a segment. So this is telling me the distance from A to B is 2 units. I know the distance from A to C, right? The distance from A to C is 2. And the distance from A to D is also 2, right? All radii have the same length. So that's how we write the length of a radius. So we put it without the bar. Because remember, when we're naming the actual part, segment AB, we use this bar above it. And that lets me know that we're talking about the segment with those endpoints. So think of this as a way of describing, look at that part. So this is telling me to look at this segment, but when I say AB equals, well, that's saying not to look at the actual segment, but pay attention to the distance from A to B now. So if I look at the distance from A to B, well, that's just 2. So again, there's a difference between with the bar and without the bar. So make sure you pay attention to those small details. And next, another part you should know is the diameter of a circle. And a diameter is simply a segment that the endpoints are on the circle and it passes through the center. So like what we have here, this is a segment CD and it passes through the center A. So that's what makes it a diameter. So it has to pass through the center and the endpoints have to be on the circle. So segment CD, or I could have named it as segment CD. Now if I wanted to talk about the length of the diameter, remember the length of the diameter and referring to the diameter are two different things. So with the bar above it in notational form like this, we're talking about the actual part. So look at the actual physical part of it, the drawing of it. And now if I'm talking about the length of the diameter, I would put it without the bar. So it would say that CD is saying what is the length? In other words, what's the distance from C to D? Well, if I look at the distance from C to D, well, from C to A is 2, and from A to D is 2, so I know this whole thing has to be 4 units. So that's the length of the diameter. And again, pay attention to the small details where the bar is referring to the actual part, the drawing, and without the bar is referring to the distance from apart for those two endpoints. Right, so the distance from C to D is 4 units. And then the other part of the circle you should know is the circumference. So there's no special way to name a circumference, but we can refer to it as the circumference of the circle with center A. So this is a circumference. So think of a circumference as the actual circle itself, this distance around. It's almost like the perimeter, but for a circle we call it circumference. So the circumference of a circle with center A. So refer to it with the center because it is possible we can have a picture where, let's say, this is a center is X, then I have another circle with center Z, and I said, oh, look at the circumference of the circle. Well, since I have 3 circles, I don't know which circumference to look at, so we would say, okay, look at the circumference of the circle with center A. So I know that I would ignore this one, and I will look at this one because this is the circumference that has a center A. And that's basically naming parts of a circle.